So, hello everybody. Nice to see you again. I hope you all had a great day. Now we are in that wonderful situation that we have the artistic team behind Sun and Sea here on stage or on the floor together with us. And they are going to talk to us about the magical monster of creating an interdisciplinary work in the size that we just experienced some days ago. And to help us sharpen the conversation, we have invited Daniel. He's a philosopher and he is also part of a new festival. It's a new festival, right?
Yep.
Yeah, a new festival called Tomorrow that is focusing on I'm so bad at saying that in English. Sustainability, yes. So we will talk both about interdisciplinary work and we will also talk about the climate changes in the future, which is also part of Sun and Sea theme. We were supposed to have Lucia, who is the curator behind the piece, together with us online or via Zoom, but we have some problems with the internet, so we decided that we now start and then maybe we will be lucky and she will join us. So welcome to everybody from Sun and Sea and welcome to Daniel.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we should also thank Traverse and Copenhagen Stage, Copenhagen Contemporary and Nordic Culture Foundation for hosting this wonderful and pretty unique event. And I'm very eager to ask all of you if you have any questions. I guess you've all seen the performance, so you must have had many questions arise from the inside. If there's anything you want to ask the artists who are present with us today, please just say so towards the end of our talk. And because this is supposed to be a format where we can really engage. So I feel very lucky and humbled as well because I was in Venice a couple of years ago to see Sun and Sea and Vaiva, Lina and Ruchile. Please apologize my tactless lack of pronouncing your surnames. When I was there in Venice, and we talked about this beforehand with Lucia, who might jump in later on, that there was this certain kind of atmosphere around the work, a lot of buzz. I remember standing in a long line, and it was also a heat wave in Europe at that time, like 40 degrees in central Italy, and we couldn't help but notice the fact as well that Venice is of course a sinking city in this context. But could you perhaps, Ruchile, just say a couple of words about how it was to bring the work to Venice and the reception at the time?
Hello, everyone. It was the second or the third already time when we showed the piece in Venice, and of course we felt a difference from showing it in Lithuania or in Germany. From what, as you mentioned, it's a sinking city, and the climate changes very obvious there. So it was a good context to emphasize the axis of the piece, which was around ecological topics. Because before we didn't put it in the first raw, like we wanted audience to experience it as a piece, but not necessarily as just about climate change. So I think Venice gave us this background where this axis was emphasized.
Yeah, I totally get that, and maybe the last couple of years also there's been sort of an explosion in the consciousness around the climate crisis, so there's always this thing about timing that maybe you just in many ways hit the right spot at that moment. But I'm curious to maybe just turn the clock back a bit and ask you how you came together to begin with and the origin of Sun and Sea. Lina?
Iva?
Viva?
How we came together? Yeah, we know each other for a very long time, actually, since we were teenagers. We grew up in the same city. So I knew Lina from experimental festivals, and we used to hitchhike to some art events. And with Rugile, we were studying in the same photography school. And later on, when we were studying our subjects in Music Theatre Academy in Lithuania, somehow we came together and thought that we would like to meet each other not only as a friend but also as an artist. And at that time in Lithuania there was very interesting movement of experimental operas where people were collaborating, like writers with composers and directors, and they were creating some very interesting pieces. And then I guess Lina said, hey, why don't we work on opera? It's like the perfect genre to meet each other, because it's where the text and the music and the visual element come together. So it all started from the wish work together. And then we made the very first piece, which is called Have a Good Day, and it's about 10, not about, but it's 10 cashiers talking, singing their monologues and coming into choirs, quite the same structure as with Sun and Sea. And later on, when we made Sun and Sea, we realized that those two topics somehow create the diptych and talk about consuming only in different ways.
Right. Wow, I think it's very interesting that there actually was a work preceding this one. But it also, to me at least, it makes a lot of sense because it seems so fully formed, the performance. And now, of course, you brought Sun and Sea to Copenhagen in more than one sense. So I'm curious to ask Lina how it's been to bring the performance to Copenhagen. I know this is the first time after a COVID lockdown or delay. So how's it been to see it performed here?
Well, thank you very much, actually, to for having us here. I know it's been a lot of effort to bring such a big work here. Also, perhaps we were kind of waving in and out in this COVID situation. After Venice, we received like a lot of invitations to go to places, and like 2020 was really like intense in our schedules, maybe even too intense. That when the crisis of the COVID came, it felt a bit of a like a relief that we don't need to kind of deal with like so many invitations. But of course, then the ones that we did manage to accept and then perform, they were very special. So our first one after Venice was in Borealis Festival in Norway, in Bergen. And then in the summer we kind of again like sneaked in between the two COVID peaks, and there was like a bit of a lighter phase where when we brought it to Zurich, and then Hanover in autumn, and then now after really like 7 months, finally we can do it in the live situation again. So it's actually very, very special, and it's special for us because we kind of, you tend to forget how it is to be on stage, to be with people, to perform, and it's also very special for the singers. We just had the meeting this morning where we kind of discuss how everyone feels, and it really feels really good for people to be able to do what they can do best and what they enjoy doing. And also it feels that the kind of group of performers that come from Lithuania and from Venice primarily, but of course there are different nationalities within the group, but we really kind of feel like a big family coming together. It feels very warm, and so it's not just on the beach and in the kind of harmonies that they resonate, but it's also between the people. This resonating thing is happening, so it's really special.
Yeah. And I thought a lot about how you are able to nurture that collective, because now they haven't been singing the piece for 9 months, so they've all come to Copenhagen, and of course you've had some rehearsals. But how do you rekindle that strength and that intensity in the performance when coming here?
I guess that's paradoxical, no? Because it really sounds as we wish, as good as we wish it to sound. So this break didn't cut anything. Maybe on the contrary, they are even more concentrated.
But it's also like, I mean, in Venice we did it for almost half a year, so I think whenever the opportunity comes to perform again, it's like people, it just comes back to everyone.
Yeah.
And now also I don't know, like in Venice we had to kind of always change people. It was such a long duration that we could not afford to have the same performance to do it again and again. And now also we can't have like a fixed group. We have to maneuver between the different people, but somehow, like we said that, you know, when you do it in Venice, then every next thing is going to be much easier than we've done it. So,
Yeah, Miriam?
Sorry. Yeah, but just also as a producer, I saw the performance in Venice and curated here together with Travers for Copenhagen Stage in collaboration with Cici. I think it's important to mention how different it is in a way here, because people are not coming in and out in a constantly flow, you cannot have audience on the beach, which you had in Venice, which was also from a producer's point of view was really the tricky. How do we do, before COVID, we were already thinking about how to get audience on the beach and how to have a system for that, blah, blah, blah. I didn't miss it at all in the performance. I think the performance worked lovely yesterday, but I think it's important also to mention that it is a different performance, because there is this audience interaction and the feeling, I would have loved to be on the beach with my dog and my kids as well. So it's just really something for you to know also, that it is kind of restricted version that we saw here in Copenhagen, and when it will travel, it's also a collaboration between different festivals in the Nordic countries, and it will go to Reykjavik Art Festival, and it will go to Malmö Kunsthal also in this period, and hopefully also Helsinki Festival in the end. That will be different performances as well, with different constructions and stuff.
Yes,
So
indeed. It's very well that you mentioned that, because in the original plan, all of you could join the beach, and you should bring whatever you bring to the beach, and enjoy it as kids and other people does. So, yeah, the performers who are not singing, they're important part of the piece. And now we had only maybe 5 people who were not singing, but entertaining themselves.
Yeah, and there's a difference in the structure and the stage, because in Venice it was this wooden old military shipyard, and of course when the audience was coming and going all the time, there was this cyclical mirroring of the work as well, that people could stay for as long as they wanted to. But I think we haven't talked about because we met briefly online to have a chat before this one, was how the characters came into being. And Vaiva, you mentioned that you've interviewed the singers to create the different characters. So to which extent are they created on the singers' own personal history and worries about this world that we live in and the climate situation?
No, we were doing. I didn't interview singers. We just started to develop the piece from doing auditions, which means that we had the open call and we wanted everyone to come, no matter their singing experience, and we wanted the diverse age and body types. And simultaneously, I was doing research and reading some like literature. I don't know, like Elizabeth Colbert, The Sixth Extinction, or there is this amazing English writer Paul Kingsnorth, who writes brilliant essays, and his ideas. He was very active environmentalist, but he left this movement because he found it too human-centric. But it's not that these texts were just like for us to prepare the soil, and to plant the seed and to develop the piece. And in regards to meeting singers, like for example, we met two amazing twin sisters. And at that time, we shared with each other the article in Guardian about corals being printed with 3D printers. And like when we saw those girls, I thought, oh, maybe one of them is printed. And that's how this character of twin sister song developed. Or there was one lady who came to auditions with her son and was holding her hand all the time, his hand, and we thought that we should just invite them and to have this connection with mother and the son. And later on, this aria of Wealthy Mommy started, or there is this bass singer, workaholic, who sings about exhaustion. So the lyrics came into being after listening his deep voice. Or there was another guy who was studying in Priest Academy, or he has studied, and he had this very liturgical voice, and that's how he inspired the philosopher's part.
All right.
So it was like a mix of reading things and meeting people, and somehow it was mixing, blending in head, and and turned out. Also, I think we had the wish to kind of have the natural relationships on the beach happening. We were wanting to kind of involve like generational relations, like real families, and some of them did actually then become part of the piece.
But when we were flexible to change it too, like in Venice, we couldn't have. We had some very important changes. The philosopher became woman, the couple in love became gay couple in love. So we are flexible as well, observing the reality and reality of the singers. We are flexible to adapt the characters too.
Nice. And I think there's a contrast between like these characters, the exhausted workaholic and the wealthy mother, and some other of the characters, for instance, the long-distance relationship couple, that they seem to be jaded or tired and really just exhausted from living on these modern terms. And of course you can use this word being jaded or tired in general about our times, and that being one of our biggest obstacles for action. But at the same time, at the expression part of the performance, I think it's extremely fresh and new and organic to us. And I remember, Lina, we talked a bit about the tonality of the music, and because it's pretty peppy, a lot of it, pretty bouncy, and of course dramatic and beautiful as well. I find the music really, along with the lyrics. just absolutely haunting. But how did you decide for this tone of the music?
Um,
Because it could have been a lot more melancholic or dramatic.
so yes, we talked like we really perhaps everything that is in the piece is following the conceptual framework that we all developed together. So it's not really about the music or about the text perhaps or about any of the particular details, but about that framework that we thought about in the very beginning, that we want to work with a group of people. We want a place for a piece that would allow for the different social groups to gather in one place, and that happened to be a beach. And then this bird eye view came also. Rugila was simultaneously working on her documentary film, so it kind of also found a way, this kind of look from above. And then we also knew that we wanted to be really, really bright and relaxed, that situation where you kind of feel that it's so bright that it's almost like you feel the sort of the fragility of it and the tension in that positive sort of like overexposed feeling. So the music is also like melting it into that feeling, and yeah, and I think we all kind of discussed that it would be nice that it sounds that it's kind of very easy music, and that it almost feels like it's something you've heard already before, that reminds you of, you know, yeah, that you could think that maybe it's a pop song that, you know, it's kind of in your head, but it's not. Yeah, so that's perhaps, and in general, I think there were kind of different directions that we could choose, and we invited like a jazz musician to say, okay, let's like improvise on the themes and like make it like more exciting, the music. But then whatever he would do, we would just say, actually, let's just leave those two notes playing. It's fine. We don't need this kind of focus on the music itself. It's actually it's something else.
Yeah. We have a question over here.
Yes, about the characters and the singing. Maybe I would be interested on your thoughts about the characters and their maybe situation and their relation to singing. Like, why do they sing, or how do they? On your thoughts about that?
Why do characters sing?
Like, or what makes them sing? Or is there a connection? Like, what? Yeah.
The motivation, why they want to share those thoughts?
In singing manner.
I guess we discussed what does it give? How would it be different if we would just say the text? It would be, of course, completely different piece. It would be more dramatical and more based on acting. So this is what we try to avoid, actually. The acting part is probably against our intention, and singing, it feels like it allows the text to be heard even in a better way, in a sharper way. So if the melody is right, and Lina always makes it right, then you really can hear the text better. That's our feeling, I guess.
Well, perhaps music becomes also part of the text. It's kind of just undetachable in a way, once we agree that that's the way it should sound. And it does, as Rugila said, we also in singing manner, we try not to really impose a specific singing manner. And a lot of people who come from the kind of classical training have sometimes to kind of unlearn certain things, or rework it in such a way that it would feel more natural and less imposed by technique or, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of charm arriving from that, that it feels like the singers are all adjusting the words to the melody themselves a bit. with a lot of freedom.
And also it makes it surreal a bit, the piece itself. Everything would be, you know, okay, but the fact that they sing gives some strangeness, adds some strangeness.
And you can even, you could make the argument that it's the ecstasy of the mind that they sing towards the sky, right? Because we are all very engaged with our own thoughts and feelings all the time. But in the performance, they're not directed to one each other, but towards the sky all the time. So that's how emotionally involved you are with your own feelings, right? You want to sing it out aloud, but you never really do.
It could be another interpretation. Yeah.
A lot of
like the
possibilities.
The practical one would be that it's the only frontal position for the audience to capture their faces. And we really fight with singers very often because it's against the physics of singing, the fact that we are lying. So especially few people are always very keen on sitting.
But that takes us back to the perspective, which is really new or different, because we're used to observing an opera from the perspective of the audience, and then seeing the performance on stage. But here we're looking down, and I know there are a lot of obvious interpretations as to why this is, but in your view, how did you come about deciding that?
It was very, very organic, because the beach came as a situation, and what is the best way to observe people in the beach so that you see them all and they don't have to reposition themselves to be present or become in a front line. So yeah, and also it gives, the framing gives you a clarity. I mean, you don't have to paint a sky or a sea if you are looking from above. It's like very clean picture of the sand and people on the sand. And it's and ideally, as Miriam mentioned, you would change the angle. It would be very nice if you could move around and watch it from different angles. That was initial intention too, that you are not fixed to one position during the show.
I think it's extremely strong because it sort of depersonalizes the viewer as well. That you are in the sky and there's really nobody. It's nobody's view or the sun's view or bird view.
Yeah, and people are like a small bugs rather than something human. Like it's a species rather than one human.
So it really underscores the coherence element to it, that how you become nobody when looking at it, but feeling part of it all. Yeah, I wish that there were more plays directed in this manner. But Viva, maybe because I think there's so many great lines and just curious elements in the lyrics or in the libretto. For instance, I really like the line about the chanterelles appearing in December and grandmother saying that it's not supposed to be that way, it's the end of the world, that these tiny disturbances or discrepancies are really signs for you to look out for. But also the dreamer's song, like it's so absurd that he is just in need of shrimp. So are there any lines that hold special meaning to you when writing it?
I think all the lines have some special meaning or little stories behind that, like three chanterelles. It's true, I found those 3 chanterelles in December. So it was incorporated into libretto, and it's like a tiny sign of a catastrophe, as you mentioned. And in regards to the dream, it's actually the dream I had. I had some sleeping problems and was prescribed with some medication, and I'm very sensitive with drugs, and I just took it and had this surreal dream about having shrimp somewhere in a castle. Wow. And now this dream talks about mm, about this our confusion with eating, with diets we have, and like that diet we choose somehow helps to, you know, to to
Like carnism. I
Pardon?
remember you introduced the word carnism to me, the fact that
Carnism.
you don't want to, as if empathetic to the
yeah.
animals,
But in this certain part in Dream, this guy is trying to be to have raw food, but he discusses with the author of the book and has the argument about the diet. So it refers to this our search of perfect diet, which could help to not to save planet, but to, you know, take care and
Individual responsibility.
yeah, and individual responsibility. And it's also sometimes it turns into some absurd and some hypocritical action. So probably this dream talks about this.
And I think that's one of the reasons why Sun and Sea works in just an extraordinary manner, that you've been able to harness this psychological realism. So it's really evident to me that those elements belong to somebody's true experience, and that this is the thing that we've been missing for us to also have the worries, the doubts that everybody's carrying around when faced with such a planetary crisis, which is really hard to relate to, because it's a hyper object, like the philosopher Timothy Morton would say. It's everywhere at the same time. It's connected to everything, and also in time. It has a long history, so it's really hard to relate to it, because it's nowhere and everywhere at the same time. We have so many different worries that doesn't have anything to do with the climate or the Anthropocene or nature at the same time, just like our human relations and careers and making it. So this is really strong to me, and I think, of course, it's not what's it called? The Day After Tomorrow is a good example of a piece of art that doesn't have any psychological depth to it at all, right? But deals with the very real fact that we are in right now, just in a very accelerated action movie kind of way. But how did you discuss this duality? Because I think it's so strong that there's a deep sense of caring and not caring at the same time. So the setting on the beach is really prevalent of us human beings loving to not care at all, because we need that. We need to enjoy being alive on this planet as well. Otherwise, there's not really anything to fight for, right? But at the same time, these doubts creep into your mind. So how did you decide to level it in that way?
it's the same to open or not to open this plastic bottle. We are always in this confusion, no?
Well, we had this perhaps also from the work point of view. We kind of hesitated as well a bit to work with this theme of climate change. It was like we knew it's not going to be an easy one to deal with, and indeed it wasn't. And what we kind of really knew from the very beginning, that we don't want, and we will try not to have the very didactic tone to the situation, because we also belong to it. And just today we got this question in the interview where they said, yeah, but like you're talking about these sensitive themes and now you're kind of, you know, traveling the world with it. So like it's a paradox, right? And then we said, well, yeah, like art is not very ecological, but we do make small steps to kind of, perhaps in this micro level, to change things, and also the piece itself, it's also not kind of putting us in the superior position where we say we don't belong to it. We actually all say that we do belong to it, and then it's a very confused situation that we also don't know the answer.
No.
And from the beginning, as Lina mentioned, it was, we faced this big challenge, how to work with such a important and hot topic. And when at the beginning we had this image of the beach, that the people would be observed from above, and knowing that this is holiday-like situation, that these texts should also be very like sunny and light, and this thread is just throbbing in the air, and you can feel it as a gentle breeze, but it's not very direct, and it's hidden, like these 3 chanterelles you mentioned, or just very subtle things. And rather than this also topic of the climate change is very anonymous and very big, so we wanted like to zoom in and to have micro stories which help to connect and to
And perhaps that's where the noise kind of and the kind of mess finds the place. We actually, I know at least I quite like when there is such an important thing being said, like when the twin sisters, they kind of say how they cry, like how they care about the situation, and they're really kind of aware of it, but then life just goes on, and the kids just shout, and the dogs bark, and the people just play their games. So it's like all these stories also get a bit lost, and
It's impossible to focus at everything at the same time. I think we're progressing really fast here, and we don't have that much time left, so we should definitely open up the floor for more questions.
And we have one question down here to start with.
Hello. I was just thinking, we're in this interdisciplinary camp where there will be artists. There are artists coming from all over the world, coming from all kinds of disciplines, all kind of backgrounds and traditions and stuff like that. I think it would be very interesting to hear, how do you work? Because we're looking at 3 different disciplines here. I mean, 3 wonderful artists, but you come from different backgrounds. I know that you've known each other way back, and of course in this situation people have just met. So you get an idea, and then what do you do? How do you sort of score your sort of collaboration? How do you find out, is this music, or is this text, or is this actually belonging to the space, or is this actually part of the staging? Because there's so many levels in what you do, and like in all other interdisciplinary works, I mean, how do you structure your process or the method you're working with? How do you how do you do that, or how have you developed your method or through these years?
So for now we did 2 works only, so the experience is not so wide,
But it is quite a long experience.
Yeah.
You work for more than 10 years, I guess.
Yeah, so we do very slowly, first of all. We don't force anything. And even now we have a lot of various invitations to develop new work, but we say we'll wait for the right moment, and if the idea will come, we will go with it. But it's not that we desperately want to do something else or something next. So I guess first it's brainstorming of what the idea is, knowing already what the format is that we want, as Vaiva mentioned, to integrate text, music and visual parts. And then, so we discuss a lot. We bring ideas to our three-hour discussion and we discuss which one is the right one. Sometimes it's in written, sometimes we are not in the same country, and we did, I think, even this one. We had first brainstorm and then exchanged letters, which is the right idea. And then when it comes to choosing the idea, then we develop the concept altogether again.
Yeah, but we also work as individual artists, so we are not like a collective that is kind of attached to each other, and we kind of, needing to keep the rhythm of producing. It's more like we really come together when there is a need.
So, but then we all have our disciplines, which we are as if connected and responsible to. So, Vaiva is definitely responsible for texts, and Lina for musics, me myself for visual directing. So but from the concept level, we do bring ideas from the very beginning. So that's, I think, our specific also.
So it's
way.
like a shared kitchen with some solo corners, but they all mix together. And even if in regards to writing text, it's not, that I lock myself in a room, write the libretto, and here you go. It's usually writing bit by bit, and then we test it with a singer. Lina suggests the melody. We just do the auditions. It's all growing and being developed simultaneously, and so connected.
And we perhaps allow to drop the ego in here. each of us is free to kind of delve into another kitchen, and no one gets insulted perhaps as much as we can do, but there is this kind of mutual understanding and trust in each other.
And also, so that's also very important, that we are from different disciplines and we actually need each other to bring the piece. So it's not that we are all like writers or musicians or...
But it's also like, I think it's the connection, the characters that you really like. It's been a long time since we've been doing it, so we went through a lot of phases, and so it's not just like a working connection.
I found it really interesting to hear your approach to have depicted mainly the sand. And then for me it was also very striking that the sea essentially was invisible, although it was present in the text. But for me, what I noticed anyway is that the only ones that could actually touch the sea or that were bringing it in were the children, as they were playing with the sandcastles. So I was wondering, for me this was very symbolic in a way of having this sea and having this kind of, invisible part that was present and there for all the adults but not really tangible. And it was only the children really who could play with it and could reach it. So I was wondering whether that's something you were working with, or rather just what was your relationship to the children and having children on the set. And I wonder about that.
It's very convenient, because if you have children, you create a work which can, where you don't need kindergarten and you just let them go. So that's what we did.
So it's not us, but it's they who found the work.
And one of them, the smallest, when we were in Venice, after a few months of being in the superficial beach, we went to a real beach, and he asked, why don't they sing?
Right.
But we accommodate not only our children, like we invite, ideally there are many children in Venice we sometimes had maybe 10 children in the same beach, so it's even more exciting. And in regards to swimming, grown-ups should come much more often with their wet swimwear. So yeah, at least this is what we try to instruct, to get some water backstage, and then they come as if from the sea. But you haven't noticed that, no? We'll try to make it more obvious.
So the swimwear is wet when they re-enter?
Yeah,
Right.
and workaholic, he has always this
Drying his
There's really an attention to detail here that I
Yeah.
think makes the work just extremely rich. And maybe with the children being on stage as well, it creates sort of a chaotic backdrop, which really sharpens every singer's focus and intensity when they're...
Well, sometimes, sometimes the children would create a sandstorm, and singers would really complain that it's difficult to... It's dusty, the air becomes too dusty.
Okay.
Sometimes we start to fight especially after 8 hours staying in the beach.
A question more? I'm loud.
Yeah, just a short one. Thank you again for your work. I really envy you for this libretto that you wrote, and I'm not patient enough to do it in 10 years. Do you have any tip for me? For example, my question would be, do you write in English? Or do you let it get it translated somewhere? I just want to write a libretto like this. Just give me a tip or two, please. How I can do it. Because you chose so many, it blew me away. And it's really fun for everyone to hear. And I forgot my prospectus and stuff like that. Where do you get this from? Is it like a collage, and then you choose it and then you put it in lines, for example, like this? Or yeah, maybe you can tell me one secret or two.
Yeah, thank you for your kind words. In what concerns this libretto, I think it would be totally different one if I would be writing it alone, but it was written in being in constant dialogue with Lina and Rugile. And this collage, the sequence of the songs, it was such a big headache. We were working all together and thinking which one has to be the first one and the second, and which lines should be just cutted. Yeah, so maybe the recipe for libretto is to be in the right constellation. I don't know, but the way I write, it's probably just using imagination and observing what is happening around, and this like documentary layer is very important, and then you somehow mix it. I don't know. I don't have the recipe, but I feel most comfortable writing in Lithuanian. It's a little bit translated in other languages, but now there will be a new book which will be bilingual, but it will be translated by the other person.
So your new book is bilingual. It has both Lithuanian and English text.
It will be.
Right, interesting. I'm really the bad moderator here. I've not brought a watch on stage, so I don't know how we're doing on time. Couple of minutes still.
I was just wondering, why are you traveling with your piece? I mean, I love the idea that you're carrying it around the world. But is it because you're changing it all the time, or is it simply just because you cannot leave it? Or, I mean, you've been traveling with it not in Corona, but quite a lot. I can understand. Is that right? Or
what would you suggest to us?
No. I don't know. I'm just asking, what's your role when you're here? I love the idea of you. Our role.
Okay.
I mean, because it's not like a normal tour. You just send things off, and someone takes care of it. This is a more different kind of piece of work, so you have to follow it. This
Yeah.
is just what I'm curious to hear about.
So
What
that-
is it you do when you come to Copenhagen? What do you actually do to install it here?
So we do the amazing team, like we do have technical director, we do have a tour coordinator and producer. So actually our roles are very fun. We do observe, and we do have a WhatsApp thread where we write if something is missing. For example, action is missing, because people sometimes become really tired and don't put, they're not, they don't want to entertain themselves like doing sports or so. So we sometimes write, please, more action, or especially with volunteers. They would sometimes bring, let's say, very bright towel, and as we need only pastel colors in a beach, we would ask, please fix it. And yeah, so we do have this. We are directing live, but also musically, we do have things to do before the performances.
But also perhaps it's not that we've done it so many times on tour. So after Venice, it's only the 4th time it's been somewhere else. But well, perhaps like in the 3 years' time, it will be like completely independent organism that does not need us anymore, which is also a nice perspective. But also we also had this. I think we have this like caring. Like with children, you can't let them go, so they need to kind of grow until you kind of really feel they are independent enough. So I think that's what we have with Sun and Sea now. It's kind of not in the teenage yet. This situation, it's still like a toddler, and there are a lot of issues that we deal with. Like they're very practical, sometimes very basic. Like if this, the singers had enough food, or if they have they need a break, or so it's very simple but very important.
As a sustainability manager, and your play is also about the climate change, just a short question, where do you get the sand from, and where will you put it after the show, after the end?
So now we heard that it's from Copenhagen.
I wasn't the producer in that way, I just curated the piece, so I'm not sure where we got the sand from. But I'm happy for the question, because I also raised my hand because I wanted to tell a little bit about this Nordic collaboration, because I think it's so hard to work, like you also explained so beautifully, Daniel, that it's here always, all the time, and it's so difficult to kind of change habits and stuff like that. But we really worked with this, Reykjavik Art and Malmö Kunsthal and Borealis and maybe also Helsinki, to make a Nordic tour. And it's a small step, but it is a change in the mindset of the curators. And we will collaborate further on. And we are already talking about, what else can we do? Is there a new piece we want to invite? And the idea was that this Sun and Sea would first perform in Malmö and then come to Copenhagen and then go to Reykjavik. So at least we had some transport saved. It's not possible to go by train to Reykjavik, but it was between Malmö and Copenhagen, and even also with props and materials stuff we wanted to share, not to lower expenses, but really to be sustainable in our practice. So I think it's a huge issue that also more and more producers, curators, of course, have to be aware of. And I don't think that the solution is not to travel. That would be the worst thing, in my opinion, that we stop being cosmopolitans and start to be nationalists. The worst case, but then how do we do it?
Any more questions from you in the audience? Because then I have a couple to round this off. I know Lucia, your curator, couldn't be here today. Her internet connection was unstable because she also tried to be on the beach at the same time, perhaps. But she had a wonderful quote that she brought to our talk last week, which was maybe gravity is another word for love. And I think that we should just bring this into our talk today because that was pretty unique. I think it was a quote by Sean Hutchinson. But in a performance where all the singers are lying really with their backs to the ground, and the entire piece makes it also clear that how we are interdependent on each other all the time, and condition each other's lives here on Earth. I think the quote really makes a lot of sense. And then when you talked about Sun and Sea being still a toddler, which has to be corrected or has to have some kind of guidelines for its upbringing, I was curious because a lot of great bands come to their next album while being on tour. So have you, while touring, come about any new ideas for collaborations?
Actually true that the Sun and Sea also came as an idea during our previous tour. So who knows? Maybe, we'll have a long journey behind it.
We need few more tours to kind of get into the phase where we think about anything else than it. It's still like very demanding somehow. We laugh that we don't even meet during the tours. So now we force these lunch breaks together so that we actually talk, three of us. It's because now it's really somehow work focused, Sun and Sea focused.
Right.
And the time is up now. So thank you to all of you. And also just to mention here for the Traverse people that Copenhagen Stage has a program that we are part of tomorrow from 10 to 11 where Katie Mitchell talks more about art in the time of climate crisis and sustainability and different ways of working. Yeah. And we can meet here it starts 10 o'clock, so please be before and we will have it on the screen.
So Vaiva, Lina and Rojile, thank you so much for bringing Sun and Sea to Copenhagen. I think to many it brings solace and hope as well in these difficult times of climate change. So please, a big round of applause for the artists.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.